I call this meeting of York County Council to order.
Thomas Wilkerson will give the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together. We ask that you bless the county council and the work they're going to do for the citizens of York County. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
At this time, we would like to have each student introduce themselves. I'm Joseph Bass. I'm from Fort Mill High School, and I plan on attending either University of South Carolina or Auburn University for aerospace engineering.
My name is Lair Curtin. I'm from Clover High School, and I plan on attending Penn State University in the fall.
Hello, I'm Candy LaFlame. I'm a senior at Nations Ford High School. I will be attending Citadel and double majoring in psychology and political science.
My name is Michael Kendry. I'm a junior at South Point High School, and if everything goes according to plan, in a couple years, I'll be attending hopefully West Point and majoring in civil engineering.
My name is Thomas Wilkerson. I'm a senior at York Comprehensive High School, and I will be attending Clemson, majoring in agriculture, education, and forestry.
We'll now have our oaths of office for the newly appointed board and commission members. As we call your name, please come forward.
James Duncan, Jeff Blue, Paul Boger, Robert Hudson, Theron Pickens, Dorinda Wagner.
Janet Steele, Steve Fields, Andy Smith, Tim Longmire, Larry Barnett, and John Boyd. And Michael Scott.
Thank you. I'm about to administer the oath, and thank you for being here this evening for the benefit of our high school delegates here. Let them know that York County is indebted to the volunteerism of its citizens, and for that we thank you, and on behalf of the council, thank you very much. You'd each raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof, and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you. Members may want to shake your hands.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sort of have my back to you, but you hear a lot of talk about the younger generations, and I think this proves the hope we have for the future. So want to give each one of them a certificate and thank them for coming, and thank all the students here that are here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
And just make sure the names are correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. I'm gonna have all the councilmen come forward, and we're gonna stand behind them and have a photograph taken.
War Eagle.
And Thomas, why don't beside Michael, so we'll all be together. arms, you got it? Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna let you all go, well, whichever way is easier. No, sir, I'm good. Oh, there you are, Bruce. Okay, our next order of business, and I've had the fire marshal advises us we cannot have anybody standing along the walls. So I'm gonna have to ask the students there's two conference rooms, one out the door to the right, one to the left. But in order to obey the fire rules, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave and go one way or the other. Sorry about that. Our first appearance would be Cummings. Chris?
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight and give you a brief monthly construction update. We've had a productive month at the Fire Training Center. We've had a productive month at the Fire Training Center despite another wet month. We talked about it several times. Good progress was made. The front parking lot, all the stone bases down there, along with the parking in front of the shop building. Over at that shop building, the pre-engineered metal building has been delivered to the site. They've been shaking it out in the last few days. Hopefully we'll start seeing some metal in the air over there this week if the weather will cooperate a little bit. We've also had masons mobilize the site. They're now working out laying the burn building up, and then they'll move from there over to the training tower. The administration building, we have it temporarily got in at this point. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough-in is going on there, along with framing metal stud walls, setting equipment. This is the mezzanine in the administration building. You'll notice a couple pieces of equipment up there, but the bulk of that area will be used for storage as the fire training folks move in there. Here's a shot of just some of the stud framing and rough-in that's going on downstairs in that administration building. This is the elevator pit at the training tower. It's been waterproofed, and again, we'll be moving masons over there as soon as we can. That thing's 4 stories, so we want to get it coming up as quick as we can. Any questions, Fire Training Center?
Questions for Chris? Bruce?
Target date is still December?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
How many square feet is that admin building?
The admin is about 8,000 square feet, if I'm remembering right.
Any other questions?
Okay, at the courthouse, as you know, we've awarded the Phase 1 demolition project that came in under budget. The contractor actually started mobilizing today. So over the next 6 weeks or so, we hope to complete that package, get it ready for a general contractor to move in. The pre-qualification committee for the general contractors has had their initial meeting. We'll be meeting again next week to hopefully finalize the pre-qualifications on the general contractors. And finally, the architects and engineers are continuing to push towards construction documents. Hope to have those wrapped up in a month or so, and those folks will be back to present the final construction documents to you guys for the courthouse. And And then this is just our overall management schedule. No areas of alarm at this point. Everything's pretty much tracking where it should be at this point. Any other questions?
Chris, here again, it's spring of 2016, the anticipated completion of
For the courthouse. The
Right.
courthouse will be August of 2016.
August of 2016.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And normally, we don't allow questions during appearances, but Ms. Miller's got an important topic to talk about, and then Mr. Bell. So on those two appearances, councilmen can ask questions.
Good evening. For the record, Audrey Miller, Planning Director for York County. My first presentation tonight is a comprehensive plan update. Council requested that I provide an update every month, so this is my first one. Just as a recap, the purpose of the 2004 comprehensive plan update, it's not a total rewrite. We will be maintaining the appropriate and applicable portions. We will be removing goals and objectives that cannot be achieved or are no longer applicable, and we'll be updating information. The county has, I know sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but the county has, from 2004 till the present, has been implementing the goals and strategies from that plan, and we continue to work on those as we move forward. So what have we accomplished so far? We've had public meetings. We've had 4 public meetings. They were in Rock Hill, Lake Wiley, Fort Mill, and York. We've had 2 advisory committee meetings. The consultant has had stakeholder meetings. There has been data collection, and the consultant has been working on assembling all of the public comments received to date. The advisory committee, as background information, the advisory committee is comprised of 15 members. They were appointed by council. We have 2 from each district and a planning commission member on there. Their purpose is to provide guidance and input on goals and objectives and help develop the comprehensive plan update. We just had an advisory committee meeting on April 16th. I think the quote of the day that came out of that was, "We're not going to try and boil an ocean." They decided they would focus a lot on a little. So the general consensus was that the current comprehensive plan has a lot of detail, and they want to try and scale it back, and instead of focusing on a lot of subjects, they want to focus on a few but give it a lot more attention. They also identified the areas of focus. They were job growth, traffic mitigation, growth management, parks, recreation, and open space, and agriculture. The consultant deliverable, the big one that they have provided is the state of the county. They provided a draft report to the advisory committee. It's about 110 pages and is full of lots of information about the current state of the county on a variety of topics. And I've listed some of them for example. So we have population, economic development, and the one I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is housing. There are 67.4% of the units in the county are single-family detached, 11.1 of the units are mobile homes, and 21.5 are apartments, townhomes, and condos. And the reason I wanted to highlight that was this information will be useful as we move forward on the zoning ordinance revisions, because it gives you an idea of what the housing status is in the county. They also have in there a discussion of the capture of townhouses versus single-family detached units. They have survey information about what people are interested in. They also had an interesting fact in there. There is a 2.8% vacancy rate with an average rent of a little over $1,000 per month for the apartment units that were developed in the past 5 years. Overall, so that's for all units, it's $875 a month with a 3.2% vacancy rate. And I wanted to bring that to your attention again as we move forward on the zoning ordinance revisions, because this is important information for deciding how to act on the public comments that came out of those meetings. And then the pending housing units, the majority were actually in Fort Mill, and York County had a little less than 3,000 of them. The the plan is to have the State of the County report put on the website. The consultant asked the advisory committee to look at it in the draft form, provide comments within the next 2 weeks. So we hope to have that finalized within 2 to 4 weeks for everyone to look at. To recap the public meetings, we had our kickoff meeting in Rock Hill on March 10th. We had 41 attendees. The next one was in Lake Wiley. We had 106. At Fort Mill, we had 54, and at York, we had 17 attendees. We also have the website, and to date, we have a little over 1,000 unique visitors who have been providing comments as well. And I think that's important to point out because in the new digital age, people don't always attend meetings. They like to do their comments via the website. The most active postal codes on the website are the ones that I have listed for you. During the April 16th meeting, the advisory committee did express concern about the attendance at these meetings, especially the York one where we had 17. So they really want people to come out and provide more comments, more input, because that is what they're going to be relying on to a point for helping make decisions about what the comp plan should have in it. What the consultant did with the public comments, they organized them by themes. I did not list all the themes, but they arranged them according to these topics. Economic development, and these are just some just some of the comments that we received. So it was support small business, more white-collar jobs, promote economic viability. They obviously had a lot of comments about roadways. I only gave you a few of them, and there were all different types of comments on that issue. They also commented on public transportation, development. And this is one of the things I wanted to also point out about the public coming out and attending. One of the most popular comments under development was no quarry, which we couldn't understand why until we were at the advisory committee, and one of the committee members mentioned that he rallied his troops and said, you need to come to this comprehensive plan public meeting and talk about the quarry. And so that's why that became such a popular comment, because this person was able to bring out people that were interested in that topic. They also talked about Parks and Recreation. That was another popular comment, that they wanted a Parks and Recreation department and more recreation facilities. The consultant also did this nice graphic, and they organized by the community the themes and comments for those individual areas. So the future meetings, the location for all of these are to be determined, but the dates are set and the time. The advisory committee meets 6:30 to 8 p.m., and they will be meeting on May 14th, June 11th, July 16th, and August 20th. The next public meetings, they are all 5 to 7:30. We have one with location established, that's at Baxter Hood on May 5th. And I do want to point out, unlike the previous meetings, these are not district or location specific. These are all in one location on these topics. So please, for the public, don't wait to come out thinking you're going to have one in Lake Wiley or Fort Mill. No, they're going to be in one location. So what they're going to tackle at the May 5th meeting is visioning. So they want community input on goals and objectives. The Tuesday, June 11th is a Shaping the Future workshop. It's the same day as the advisory committee. They're going to be doing a joint one. That one should be very interesting because the consultant will do alternative land use scenarios. So it's called scenario planning. So they will be able to bring in and show you different scenarios based on the input they've received from the public. So what does low density development look like? What is medium? What is high? So that should be very interesting, and I think people will be most interested in that topic. And then the last one would be Tuesday, August 13th, putting the plan into action. And the schedule will be posted on yorkforward.com for people to find and to put in their calendars. So moving forward, what are we going to be doing? Well, first and foremost, we need the public's input and attendance. So again, we keep encouraging everyone, come out to these meetings, visit the website, give us your thoughts and opinions. We are on schedule for completing the document by September of this year. That's not council adoption, that's just the consultant's got to deliver us that document. We condensed the schedule to accommodate the 1 month delay, so May and June have lots of milestones in them. And then again, the documents will be posted on yorkforward.com as we move forward. And with that, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Henderson?
Yes, I was just wanting to point out the fact that apparently, compared to the overall population, you know, these are some very active folks that are coming to these meetings, but they are folks that have been in this from way back, that's been very concerned. I'd almost call these folks the silent majority. And I think the most of our people, they're very concerned about these very issues. They're just too busy with life, living life, working, coming home, and many of these folks that are concerned, that at least that I get a lot of email from, you know, for whatever reason they can't make some of these meetings, but they are just as concerned as the folks that did come. And I just for the record, I want that, you know, clearly pointed out, and because this is a problem that we're all facing when it comes to the density issues, to saving the lake for our future generations, so we don't end up like Southern California and other places that dry up. Part of that's natural, I understand, but there again, man, some of it's brought on by humans as well, trying to protect some of the rarest of things that could easily be moved somewhere else, because some of these animals were moved to where they're at now. So with all that said, just want to make sure that folks know that, you know, when you put us in these seats, we are doing the best we can to meet your expectations. And I'm asking, you know, get others involved. For the most part, when there's any type of big movement or any major accomplishments that are made in this country, from local to the federal level, it's always started by just a handful of people. And it looks like it will be that way, at least up till this point. One other question I was wanting to ask, are we still focused on some level, some way to have an overlay that would possibly be, that would be legal proof, to where we can make sure about certain distances from our water source?
Two answers to that. One, since this is about the comprehensive plan, I do not know as it relates to the comprehensive plan, because that'll come out through the goals and objectives that the public identifies. As far as for zoning ordinance revisions that we've been talking about, that is part of my presentation that is still under consideration for the council.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that, I understand.
Any other questions?
I have one
Yes,
question.
Ms.
Audra, I
Cox.
hate to put you on the spot, but in terms of how I understood, you said the breakdown is 67% single family, 11.1 mobile home, 21.5 apartment townhomes. How does that measure up in terms of other, I guess, counties our size? Is that in line with it? Or are we out of?
The answer is I don't know, and that's one of the things I was going to bring up
Okay.
in the next presentation as well, that the report has been a work in progress, and I've gotten a chance to look at it, and I do want to follow up with the consultant on those issues of, are we in a tight market for multifamily or apartments? Are we oversaturated in something? And how, you know, what should our goals be? So I will have an answer for you, if not at the next meeting. I believe we are trying to do a workshop. I'll have that for you by the workshop.
Thank you. And I'm curious to see how that matches up to some of the other industries and how we're going to deal with the economic development piece of it, is to see how we match up and where we can take advantage of that, because it may not just be economic development for the sake of economic development. It might be better for us to plan this. So I appreciate all the time and effort that you guys have put into this. I'm looking forward to seeing some real data.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Yes, sir.
Just,
Mr. Wing.
one quick comment. I mentioned when I was at the York community meeting, you know, each community is a little different in how they do things and respond. And several of the people there mentioned to me that they would like a flyer or something if we do. I know we don't, you know, can't mail everything, but I know we've got a representative from the Greater York Chamber here tonight, and I was told, there are some entities in this side of the county that would, restaurants, stores that would put those flyers up and get that word out better than maybe internet and that kind of thing in some of the areas, in the more rural areas where it's a little harder to get on with a dial-up computer and stuff, so. So if that's something we could do for, future meetings, I'm sure we could get the Greater York Chamber. I don't want to speak for Mr. Boger, but, and I've had other people that volunteered and told me they would be more than happy to try to get some of those flyers out in the community to let people know so that maybe we could get a better showing from this side of the county. So.
I appreciate that. We will draft some flyers and we will follow up with you and other council members if you know of places where we could hand them out and people to give them to. We would actually really appreciate anyone who would like to take a stack and post them or hand them out for us.
Thank you.
And I would like to add to what Ms. Cox requested, the apartment ratio. I know that actually is a tax base when we consider Act 388, so I'd be curious about our ratio, how it measures with an average county for, if you could kind of look that up for us. Any other questions? Next.
Again, thank you. I am here tonight to just provide a brief update of information that I started presenting to you at the last council meeting. We were discussing proposed revisions to the zoning ordinances, and there was some direction from council and some questions from council. I probably do not have answers to all of them, but I did at least want to come back before you and let you know I was working on it and where I stand with the process. First and foremost, I owe an apology to the Lake Wiley community. When I did my presentation last council meeting and I told you the synopsis of the public comments, we had made a promise, we the staff had made a promise to the Lake Wiley community that we would convey to the council how angry they were. They are very, very angry. And I forgot to mention that, and I sincerely apologize. Ms. Blackwell stopped me afterwards and reminded me of that. So that is my follow-up to the Lake Wiley meeting to convey that information to you. We did have the follow-up Fort Mill meeting. It was April 14th at Springfield Elementary School. We did have it from 6 to 8 p.m. That was partially due to the request of the people that came at the first Fort Mill meeting that were upset that we had it from 5 to 7. We actually didn't have any attendance from 7 to 8. They all came actually from 5:30 to about 6:45. We had approximately 33 people attend, but that number is a little skewed because unbeknownst to us, one of the high school AP environmental science teachers promised her class extra credit if they came to this meeting. So some of them identified themselves on the sign-in sheet as high school students, others didn't, and I think it was about a 50-50 split, 50 members, 50% from the public and 50% from the high school. As an aside, we, the staff, have recently gone through job questionnaires and we described our job duties. I wish I had waited to fill mine out because apparently my job duty includes taking 20 selfies with high school students. To prove that they were there. If you knew how horrified I am by selfies, that was quite a task for me. So the additional comments we received, they want to develop in a sustainable manner. They do not want clear cutting. Widen Highway 60 at Gold Hill Road, left turn lanes on Munn Road. Someone did say they wanted to allow density bonuses, and then we had another person that requested that we go back to the pre-2013 ordinance changes, and it's my understanding prior to that time the minimum lot size was not less than 10,000 square feet, but the ordinance did allow in certain circumstances to go down to 7,500 square feet and then go back to the setbacks of a minimum of 10 feet. So the proposed district boundaries, I really did want to have maps for you tonight, but we were working on meetings and I'm a little bit behind. So just in theory, what we have is the 1 mile buffer around Lake Wiley. We decided at the staff level what we would present, that is 50% or more of the parcel was within the boundary, we would include the entire parcel. We weren't doing split parcels. That gets really messy. And that's the 1 mile buffer includes the coves that a half mile would not have. For Fort Mill, what we were proposing is use the natural barriers, which is the river, and then the jurisdictional lines. Like I said, we do have the draft maps prepared, but I need to work on them some, and they will also have data for you, such as how much of the current land within those districts is what the current zoning is, broken down by district, how much is considered undeveloped, how much is developed, and the percentage breakdown of what is it developed as single-family townhomes, apartments, so you have an idea of how much area is being affected and what would be affected by the changes. So the potential results, because as I said last time I was here, that the main comments were to limit density, kind of a generalization on that. Apartments were an issue. So those were the two big ones. And what I wanted to just point out to you tonight is decisions result in consequences. And it is my job to point what those potential consequences are, good, bad, or indifferent. Also, just to point out, my staff, the planning department, and I, we don't control the market. The market and demand drives what people want and where they go and what they want to do. So that is always a force out there that is to be considered. Also, the boundary lines, when we present them to you, they're just lines on a map. I don't have the Great Wall of Lake Wylie or York County. So I've got a map, I got a line. So on one side of the line, you may be able to do something, and then right on the other side, you might not be able to do something. And that could be right across a road, or it could be just parcel to parcel. So the potential results from this is we could see sprawl. I cannot stop a rezoning or development request, and I'm saying a request. Somebody can submit an application outside that boundary that today may be zoned agricultural, and they say, well, now I've got a market for multifamily because inside the boundary we're limiting it. So that may happen. There could be increased costs associated with infrastructure as you extend outside the boundary. And then also there's a potential for farmland or open space to be reduced if there's development pressure. Also, I'd like to point out that reality and perception are not necessarily the same thing, and that's why I brought up the housing portion of the state of the county. If we ban apartments or multifamily and we require only large lot, even if it was just inside a certain area, it limits housing opportunities. And one area it might and probably would limit is for young workers. And it's important for any community to have a well-balanced workforce and a well-balanced demographic. So also, we do not want to see what I would call the gray community, which is where we're top-heavy in one demographic. And that's just the way life progresses. We start out in apartments, we move to small homes, we may move to larger homes, and sometimes we move back to apartments. So Councilwoman Cox had asked me, could we narrow this down to certain topics to consider? So we are staying with the ones that we presented at the public meeting. We will bring to you density, permitted uses, density bonuses, street connectivity, and traffic impact analysis. And we had talked about last time about district boundaries, but street connectivity and traffic impact analysis, they would be countywide. Those are applicable to the county. That I can do with no problem. Density bonuses also may be countywide. I don't know at this point how we're going to address that. So I did want to take a minute and tell you the topics we would not be addressing unless council asked me to. And I think it's important that I explain why I'm not trying to bring these up before you during this short time period. I did hear the public. I did. I took notes. I sat through the meetings. I'm not ignoring them. I just want to lay out why we're not trying to address these at this time. The first one was impact fees. That was a big, big comment from people. And the reason why is impact fees cannot be implemented in 3 months. I can tell you that. First thing you have to do is establish a baseline, and that requires a study showing the existing level of service for whatever you want to have an impact fee for. My staff and I do not have that area of expertise. You'd have to retain a consultant. They would have to do that. It would probably take, in my estimation, probably 6 months to at least have a baseline on that. Also, the impact fees cannot be be collected for roads or schools. The reason for that is roads, we address through pennies for progress, and schools, it's my understanding the deadline was missed. So that was the two main areas that people wanted to address by impact fees, and those are the two areas that apparently we cannot do. The other one was protecting Lake Wiley in the general sense. I'm not addressing that issue. The reason is I don't really have any specificity on that, and the timeline is too short for me to analyze the issue. I know there's lots of data. I just sat through the Duke relicensing meeting on Friday. As part of their relicensing process, Duke did 31 studies, and a good number of them were related to water quality. So I know there's data out there. I just don't have the time right now to look at all of it. I need to define the problem, and then there has to be determine the solutions. That doesn't mean that water quality is not important to my department or that we're not doing anything right now about it. I did want to point out some things that will be coming up that probably most people do not know about. First and foremost, we have what's known as an MS4 permit. That's part of the Clean Water Act. It's a 5-year period, 5-year permit period, and we have requirements for the county that are phased in over this time period. What it does is it allows stormwater discharge for the county. So we are considered a small MS4, but we still have to have the MPDES permit. As part of that, we as a county had to tell DHEC and the federal government, well, what are we going to do to protect our water quality? So the first requirements we've been good on, we have already implemented those. The big one is public outreach and education. So we go into classrooms and we try and educate the children and get them aware of how they can address water quality on a day-by-day basis. We are actually going to get a billboard along hopefully I-77. We attend local events. We will be at Earth Day and we'll be at the Public Health Fair. We also have been inspecting active construction sites. That was part of the permit. But now we will be switching gears a little bit. We'll still be doing all of that, but we're going into the year 2 to 5 requirements. And so we have 4 or 5 big new requirements for us. First one is we need to inspect all outfalls for illicit discharge in a 3.5-year time period. There are 5,000 to 7,000 outfalls that we will be inspecting, according to my staff. We will also be inspecting all of the detention ponds in our MS4 permit boundaries. So this will be an interesting shift because probably most of those detention ponds are now owned and maintained by the homeowners association. So we will be talking to them. That leads to why we will be doing increased outreach and education for homeowners association. We also will inspect the public facilities to see if we are good at monitoring our water quality, and we think there's approximately 40 of those. So those are like recycling facilities and lift stations. We will also be doing monitoring for the total maximum daily load at 2 watersheds. We'll be providing training for contractors, and we also have an ordinance revision coming up. We will need to modify our current ordinance to address the detention of water quality, so it's 1 acre or more of land disturbance. Currently, it's 2 acres and 5 acres within the MS4 boundary. Also, future actions, and when council asked me for recommendations of what I think we should pursue, this is a recommendation I would make. We were approached by the city of Rock Hill last week. They submitted for a DHEC grant to study the Catawba watershed because it's a 3D waters, waters that are impaired. Want to know why it's impaired. Rock Hill submitted. DHEC came back and said, you know what, that water crosses jurisdictional lines. We'd like York County involved in this, and I believe also they wanted Fort Mill. So we are actively talking to Rock Hill about joining with them in this study, and it would be a grant for the county and Rock Hill. It does have a 20% match, but we can do that in kind, which means with labor. So that is something we're looking at, and we think that would be a good thing because it would provide a study, it would provide data, and it would allow us to identify a problem that we could work on solving. Lastly, one of the things that has come up in public meetings and also through individual comments, there's a question about the fine versus stop work orders. People have asked me, well, don't you think we should increase the fines? I don't necessarily feel that is necessary at this point because what I have the authority to do, my department does, is we can issue a stop work order. And those are actually more costly than the fine, because what happens is if somebody is out there and they're doing construction and they don't have their BMPs up or they're doing an illegal discharge, I can stop it immediately. And while that stop work order is going on, they are still paying on their construction loans. They have lost their contractors for that time period. So they have a huge incentive to get everything corrected so they can start work again. And really, that's what it's about. It's not to collect fines. It's to bring them in compliance and get them to correct the problem. So, with that, I'll be happy to take any questions, comments.
Questions for Ms. Miller? Mr. Winkler?
Thank you for all the work and for getting back to us as quick as you have. And I know you're fairly new in the position, but do we have any records as to how many times we have done a stop work order in the past?
I'm sure I can get the number for you. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I can find out.
It's a low number.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if we really use it like we could, so.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes, Mr. Miller, first of all, I admire all that you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that you were willing to step into a hornet's nest, and that's basically what's happened here. But there's something that you mentioned earlier that was on one of the screens there, and it mentioned that about market demand drives all this. And, you know, I'm sure if I mention anything about any type of regulation or any type of restriction concerning the market, there are some folks out there that believe that you know, you shouldn't restrict it at all, which is insane, because you know, I believe in capitalism being as unbridled as possible, but it's kind of like the days of John Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and all those guys back then that had just totally unlimited access to devastate other people and devastate the whole market and be a monopoly and all this kind of thing. And if we just let nothing but just market decide everything, after a while we will end up destroying ourselves. You know, even though this kind of goes against my own grain here, I just believe in limited regulation, and I do mean limited but common sense regulation. And I just feel like that with all these things that you've mentioned, I just want to make sure that that it is really getting across, you know, from our people, because, you know, I mean, let's face it, I mean, the people are the boss, not us. And I feel like that they're making it very clear. Density is a big issue. The water quality, preserving the lake, preserving their quality of life, their land value, their home value, property values, and trying to prevent things like what happened at Crowder's Creek over the last several years, with it filling up with silt and coming from upstream. I know there's a lot of guilt to go around as far as how some of these things came to be. But as far as what we can do to try to change it and try to alter, reduce, so forth, I just feel like that, I don't know if it's fully being understood how urgent this is, how important it is, because I'm just convinced that if we don't get as busy as a one-legged cat in a sandbox, we're going to be in big trouble. And I say that, old Mr. Kerr would be proud of that one. But I plead with you And everyone, under the sound of my voice, please, let's work toward this and get it right, and as soon as humanly possible. Thank you.
Comment? Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
Audra, quick question. Townhomes fall into a, what, BD 3? Or is that condos?
Off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't.
One of the two.
remember.
Townhomes
Yeah.
and condos fall into this kind of this BD 3.
Yes,
As I recall. So do gas stations.
yes.
Right.
So, yeah, how will this ordinance address? It seems to me there's a big difference between a gas station, which is a business, and a townhome, which is where people living in high density areas. I'd like to see some of the way we classify zoning make more sense to separate these things. These things have nothing, at least in my mind, and now from a planning standpoint, you may say, oh no, it makes total sense. Well, if so, I'd like you to explain it to us in a couple of weeks when you come back, because I don't get it as I sit here right now. And one way, if we're going to get a handle on growth, we're going to really get a handle on density, is trying to take land that is, and say, well, that just doesn't make sense as a zoning category, that would even be something we would consider. It just doesn't seem to fit within that grouping. So I don't know if that falls into one of those 5 categories you're looking at, but it would be something nice to look at when we have the opportunity.
It will, and I should have brought my spreadsheet. I did do a spreadsheet with for residential uses, what was permitted in each zoning district, and I will have that for council to look at, because I do know that's going to be one recommendation, that many of our districts are so close on what they allow that there's very little to distinguish them, and we would recommend distinguishing them better by uses, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody? Nope. And, you know, at a future appropriate meeting, you know, I want you to come up with a clear recommendation, because at first view, you realize the problems like Wiley and Fort Mill, you think, well, overlay is the only way that's going to deal with it. But then you have the negatives that you deal with versus across the line, and the sprawl and the negatives and all that. So hopefully you'll come with a clear-cut recommendation on just a general overview redo of the county-wide situation versus multiple overlays, which I'm starting to have more concerns about. But anyway, thank you, Ms. Miller. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Next person is Mo Bell. Mo, and I think you have 2 other people with Linda and Mark.
Yes, I have several people, so if they would sort of get ready. First, I want to thank the county council for your job, your service. I know it's a tough job. You're sort of in a situation where you're trying to do the right thing, and it's hard to make everybody happy, so appreciate your service. And secondly, I want to thank all the volunteers from the YMCA that are here and the donors who helped make our project go, and Clover, Lake Wiley, so appreciate them coming. And third, I want to thank our swim team, the Rays. And the Rays were here. Those were the guys in the white T-shirt. And I know you have regulations. You couldn't let them stay. But
Blame the Yorktown Fire Marshal.
Yeah, I know. I understand. But isn't it a shame when they got here at 5:30 and they could have sat down, but because of good manners, they didn't. So I'd like to ask those of you sitting to thank them before you leave. The reason you're sitting is our swim team members had good manners to allow you to sit. So that's just the way it is. I understand.
And I was here.
Very diplomatic.
Didn't make that up.
Linda's going to start out, but Upper Palmetto YMCA, if you're not familiar, we have 9 locations. We're in Fort Mill, York, Clover, Rock Hill. Some cities have 2 locations. We've been open for business since 1913, so we've been around for 102 years and do lots of different things in sports, fitness, child care, and senior adults. So feel very proud of what we do. And also, we're a nonprofit, and of course what that means is at the end of the year, if you do a little bit better than breaking even, you put the money back in reserve, so you'll have money when you have a roof leak or some other expensive thing. No money ever goes back to the board members. They're all volunteer. So Linda, if you could start us off.
Well, as I think all of you know, last year the Clover School District had a bond referendum, and it was approved by the voters, and it included a full facility YMCA with an aquatic center attached. The reason we put the full facility with the aquatic center is so that it could be self-sustained, and we wouldn't have to go back to the school district for any money to operate the pools, and also so we could provide more recreation for the people of Clover and Lake Wiley. And we are here today to request funding from the hospitality tax to help us fund the 50-meter outdoor swimming pool and a zero-entry water park. And since Christmas, we have been undergoing a capital fundraising campaign, and we've raised about $400,000 so far. We continue those efforts. Your million, that if you will be able to approve, will get us over the top so that we can go ahead and start construction in the initial phase when this building's built. The cost increases so significantly that it would just be cost prohibitive to do it at a later date. So we really need to do it all at one time. But let me tell you a little bit about why we feel like a 50-meter pool is needed. It will be another venue for the student athletes from all over the county. Now, we're not just talking about Lake Wiley and Clover here. You can see the numbers on our current competitive swim team, and we do not plan to duplicate this team. We're just going to grow it. Currently, we have 182 swimmers, and we plan with the new facility to grow that to 300. These are dedicated student athletes. They practice 6 days a week, 2 mornings a week at 5:30 a.m. So they actually want to be here. This is, they are dedicated student athletes. And you can see the breakdown over here in your package by location. It's roughly about 1/3 of the students come from Rock Hill, about 1/3 from Fort Mill, and the other third is from Western York County, York and Clover, Lake Wiley combined. We have over 60 state-ranked swimmers and over 20 nationally ranked swimmers on the Rays. Our coach, Tim Conley, has been named Coach of the Year in South Carolina for 8 times, and he is on the YMCA National Coaches Advisory Board. There is no facility for these swimmers to practice the 50-meter course, which is swim in the summer. The $1 million we're requesting from the Hospitality Tax Fund will not only attract tourism and increase tourism tax contributions, it will provide an additional practice facility with a 50-meter pool. It will allow this area to develop world-class swimmers and even Olympic gold medalists. This is a picture of the outdoor of the facility, and the land that the building will be on is right next door to Crowders Creek School on a 4-lane highway on 274. This is a drawing of the front lobby, and the reason we're showing this is because these swim meets that we're proposing having are huge things. So we have a lot of room for registration. There's a large community room that's part of this plan. When we're not having swim meets, that can be used for Rotary meetings and other nonprofits to do different things for their civic organizations. We have a gym, a double gym with a walking track. This is desperately needed in Lake Wiley. There are no gyms to play basketball. So this will be great for students. It will be great for senior citizens. It will also be a great holding area for these large swim meets. When not everybody swims at one time, but these things go over a period of 2 to 3 days. So it'll be places that teams can come together and gather and wait until their time to swim. The indoor pools. The building is designed with 2 indoor pools. One is a cool water pool for swim practice and high school swim meets. The high school meets will take place in the summer, so they will be inside. It will also allow overflow from the large winter meets at the Rock Hill Aquatic Center. so those meets can actually grow too. The warm water pool will be for adult senior exercise, or senior adult exercise, water aerobics, and for teaching children from the Clover School District to swim, which is part of our agreement. We have to teach all the children to swim. The proposed outdoor pools. This is a 50-meter and a zero entry water park, and they're joined together, so it's actually one large pool. This was designed this way to save construction costs and operating expense. This piece of this facility is imperative because it will truly make this a community center. It will give a place for other daycare centers, church groups, and other nonprofits such as the Boys and Girls Clubs, Children's Attention Homes, those type of organizations. It will give them a place to come and do some recreational swimming. Currently, there is no place for recreational swimming in Western York County. We have in Clover about 400 children in summer day camp, and in York they have about 150, and those children are bused twice a week to the Fort Mill YMCA to use their water park. The deck space will allow for 6 sets of portable bleachers. With the indoor holding areas and this seating, we will be able to accommodate the large swim meets proposed in the economic impact study. The outdoor restrooms can be left open during the winter months for outdoor sports and other activities. There will be overflow parking for the swim meets available next door at Crowders Creek Elementary, as well as the adjacent soccer fields. And now Mo's going to tell you a little bit about the plot of the land where all this is.
Thank you, Linda. This is just sort of a site, a grand view, I guess, of the site, just to get you a little more familiar with it. As you look at the far right, that's Highway 274, which is, and the top part is heading toward Lake Wiley area. Directly in the upper right-hand corner, you see one color photo. That's the YMCA. That's where it's located. Just the very top is sort of a bluish color. That is Crowders Creek, or part of Lake Wiley. Now, if you're familiar with that, it doesn't look nearly that nice. It's really more of a built-up creek, so don't think it's a beautiful lakefront property, not exactly, but it does have water there that we think we can use for canoe launch or some other things maybe. So you see the YMCA at the top, and just below that is something that sort of looks like a spider. That's Crowders Creek Elementary, which again is right on 274, and below that in pink, I think that's a new housing development, maybe Crescent Land. I'm sort of not quite sure. I know they're clearing land now for that property. And then the yellow piece to the middle bottom, that's some proposed ball fields. I know y'all been in discussion of that. The green area above that is wetlands, so it really can't be used for much of anything. And the pink on the far left is just future development. I'm not really what's in store for that. So it's a great site for us being on the highway. Is good visibility, and it's good and central for that Clover Lake Wiley area. It's probably about 10 or 15 minutes from any of those parts. Also, probably about 15 minutes from Newport. So it's a pretty good location for us. Now, if I'm sitting in your shoes, so far I'm saying, well, this is nice, and I like it, and everybody wants to help the seniors and the kids and all that. But there's a business side of it too, and this is that, what you're looking at now. You have a study with you that was done from Dr. Brooker, who's a professor at Clemson University. This same professor has done economic impact studies for recently for Fort Mill, for some ball fields, also for the soccer complex in Rock Hill and other places in the southeast, not just Rock Hill. So these are good numbers. These are not something that I sat down and sort of scratched out on a notepad. These should be good numbers. I'm going to walk you through it. This is sort of a summary of that 8-sheet report, and I think it'll make sense. How many swimmers, spectators per day? 1,650. That's 550 swimmers from out of town. We also have 150 local swimmers, but we couldn't count those. And then 1,100 spectators. Each child will bring 2 swimmers. All these numbers are from Dr. Brooker from his past, or Brookover from his past experience. Expenses per day, $95.18 is expected to be spent per day per person. So if you multiply that out, $1,650 times $95.18, it should give you about $157,000 per day spent by people attending the swim meet. How many days is a swim meet? It's typically 2.5 days. Families come in early Friday and leaves late on Sunday. So 2.5 days is pretty average. So how much money is spent per swim meet? About $392,600. And of course, now we're getting into what's really important. Well, how much tax revenue does that generate for York County? Per swim meet, about $23,000. Earlier, we had projected 4 swim meets. We got input that really, you know, if you want to spend this kind of money, you want a little more out of it. So the Clover School District has agreed to heat the water. So this outdoor 50-meter pool will now be open April through October, which allows us to have a couple more swim meets. So now we're projecting 6 swim meets a year, not 4, and that's going to increase tourism a good bit. Again, a little multiplication per swim meet times 6, about $137,680 in tax revenue coming in. Now, what will go out? $1 million. That's what we're requesting. Without this gift, we will not be able to build these pools. We can't do it. It's just not there. So if we get the $1 million gift, how will it be paid back? Well, that's up to you guys. I know you've talked about a bond or whatever. The Accommodations Tax Committee recommended $125,000 per year for 8 years. 8 times 125 is $1 million. So if you do what they recommend, you've got 125 going out and 137 going in. Well, there's more magic to this. Our agreement is for 25 years. We will be running that YMCA/school facility for 25 years. And you know as well as I do, it's going to be extended. Well, when you take that amount, $137,000 times 25 years, your revenues are $3,441,975, and that is not adjusted for inflation. If you added 2 to 3% inflation, you're over $1 million of revenue. So we're asking you to spend $1 million to get back $4 million. As a businessman, I don't know many deals that come along that good of a deal. Now, there's another part, again, if I'm in your shoes, because you have people that need money and you can't do them all, I know. But there's a bigger question when any guy in recreation says, I need money to build something, you need to ask a second question. I think you guys already know this. What's it going to take to operate it? Because sometimes that's a lot more than building it. Well, I can tell you, absolutely zero. The YMCA will fund this. We have experience in doing this. And that's why we want the water park. The water park helps generate members, and members pay for that big pool that's going to lose money. Have you seen any 50-meter pools for profit? No. Are there any 50-meter pools within 100 miles of Charlotte? Not outside. Yes, there are some indoor pools. But if you see them, they're supplemented by either by a county or a college or a rec department. They're not for profit. So $1 million goes out, $3.5 million comes in. The net profit is $2,442,000 for the county. These numbers are good numbers. Lisa is not here from York County Visitors Bureau. We've spoken to her about these numbers. She said she thinks they're conservative. We think they are too. I think we're going to have a lot more swimmers than we say. But from a business side, we think it makes sense. The timeline, we are working on the school district timeline, and they are ready to get going. We're actually opening bids Thursday this week. Everybody's anxious to get started. Summer's a great time to be building. They want to move the dirt now so they can get a roof on the building by October, November. We all know that's rainy season, and it's just you don't want to be coming out of the ground in the fall. So they're ready to go, and they would like to get approval as soon as they can so they can move forward. And like I said, bid openings are Thursday this week. At this point, I have an honor of handing the mic off to the swim coach of the year for the state of South Carolina. There was a big swim meet or a banquet in Charleston. I don't know, 1,000 or so people there, a lot of people there. And I'm honored to tell you that the swim team coach of the year for the state of South Carolina is with us, Tim Conley.
Thank you for taking the time and allowing us to do this. What Mo also didn't mention is the State Male Swimmer of the Year for the state of South Carolina, and he is a Fort Mill student, and he is Zachary Pete right there. He has also been appointed to the Naval Academy, and he will be appointing there in June of this year. What I've been come up to talk about is just really what the Rays are. We have 182 swimmers, as we said earlier. There's no doubt in my mind that if this facility opens, we'll be well over 300. I've been running the events at the Aquatic Center for 2 years now, and if you ask anybody at the city of Rock Hill PRT, they know the amount of tourism we bring into the area is substantial. We run phenomenal meets. Our parent volunteer is second to none. The one thing that we really, with our hospitality that we provide to the coaches and the teams coming in, we actually, most of the meets we don't have to bid on. We get to run them. If we want to run a meet that weekend, the state allows us to run it. There is one meet every year that we have to bid on in March. And we usually go against a team in Greenville County that has about 500 swimmers. And it goes to a vote. Everybody in the meeting has to vote. There was 56 people in the meeting, and we won the bid 48 votes to 8. And of those 8 votes, they were from the Greenville County swim team. So it was just shows the impact that we have on visiting people in the area. A 50-meter pool would be second to none in the outside, especially an outside one. There's a lot of issues with air quality in pool facilities. We are fortunate to have a paddock evacuator system that allows us to have fresh air in the building. But an outside pool with a 50-meter, I have already polled most of the YMCA regional coaches from all the way up from Virginia down to Florida, and there is no doubt that they would want us to host the YMCA regional meet, which would bring anywhere from 800 to 1,000 swimmers into the area for 4.5 days. So that is a large, obviously even that weekend alone would throw those numbers higher and higher. I've only been in York County for 2 years now, and I moved here 2 years ago from Greenville County, and I just want to say I'm in awe of what y'all do in your positions and what they do in the city of Rock Hill as well. One of the main reasons why I moved here was because I saw the growth in this area and the passion that everybody has. I have an accounting degree, but I chose coaching as a profession because I see the impact that I have on kids like these back here and kids that are in the other room. We have 15 graduating seniors over the last 2 years, all of which are going on to college. I'm just going to read out some of the schools: Georgetown, Navy, University of Cincinnati, Auburn, Clemson, IUPUI, Townsend, Cornell, Campbell, UNC Asheville, and TCU. I think that really speaks to the character of children that we're raising with our swim team and through the YMCA. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Hartley.
And just to round out with a bit of a human component to this, even though economically, as a member of Lake Wiley's community, I'm so excited about this, I can't even think straight. Because as a swim parent, I know the outlay that we give other communities, and I'd like to see some of that coming back to benefit us. But more from a human element, I'm here just to speak quickly about the role that, even though it's a great thing economically, equally, it's even more beneficial to the children in our community. I'm the mother of this little guy right here. And just very briefly, I just want to let you know what it's done for him, what it's doing for him, and what it will do for him, because it's universally applicable to a lot of the swimmers that are currently involved. But what's more exciting is the number of swimmers and children that have not yet been reached, that can be reached if we have this kind of facility. First of all, this is the only sport. He's 6'6", and we get a lot of questions about, don't you play basketball? He went through 2 years of chemotherapy. He got Make-A-Wish. He doesn't have a lot of platelets. This is the only sport he can do. When his oncologist released him and said, okay, you can go back to school, but you cannot play football, you cannot play basketball, you cannot play soccer, you cannot play, over and over, and he just went, what can I do? And the doctor went, you can swim. He said, all right, I'll do that. He now holds records in the state of North Carolina for his school, and is already swimming at the national level, and he's in 10th grade. Wow. And so this has changed his life. If he did not have swimming, his health would be at a whole different level. This has restored his health monumentally more than anything else he could do, and this is the only thing he can do. Now my only challenge is feeding him enough because of the amount of calories he burns in a given day. But he went from not being able to hardly walk around across the room to now he can swim 10 miles in a day, which Coach Tim does put them through on a frequent basis. 10 miles a day. I can't walk 10 miles in a day. So for him personally, that's been a huge benefit. But for a lot of students who, for some reason, are not willing to put themselves through the impact and the injury that so many other team sports have, this is a sport that truly builds their health and doesn't have the risk of injury, and it's open to tall, short. It doesn't discriminate against certain body types. It's a great sport for anybody. But what it's doing for him, it's amazing. He's been mentored by these other two guys. We've got one going to Georgetown, this guy going to the Naval Academy, and they've been his mentors and a lot of the ones that had to leave. And swimmers are good kids. Every college, the highest GPA of any sports or of any athletes is always the swim team. So when we can get these kids in early and get them into the discipline and rigor that is common to a swim team, their grades go up. I would dare say that, and like he said, that the number of these kids going on to college, going into colleges that are affordable, even the elite colleges are very generous with money, is stunning. So this could be the key to opportunities for college that other sports might not afford. But it's given him self-discipline, great peer support and encouragement, a sense of family, and I mean, on a regular basis, he's up until 2 o'clock doing homework, gets back up at 6, does the morning practices, but you don't flinch. If you're a swimmer, that's the kind of dedication that you give, and I love the self-discipline and maturity it has built in him. But what it will do, first of all, this is one of those few sports that he's going to be able to do till he's 80. He went to a training camp down at Auburn, and Rowdy Gaines was one of his coaches. And Rowdy's, he's older than me, and I've got some years on me too, but he could get in there and hang with those 17-year-olds like nobody's business. This is truly a key to lifelong health and fitness that I'm excited to turn all of these students onto early, unlike other sports that are more impact-oriented and have a limited lifespan. But it's turning him into somebody that is going to be healthy hopefully for the rest of his life. And also, it's going to give him college opportunities that he might not get elsewhere. He's already able to swim at, like a lot of the students, it's not just him, a lot of the swimmers, he's already swimming at high D1 levels. He can swim for an Ivy League. And Ivy Leagues, you think, well, that's expensive, $72,000 a year. No, getting in is the key. If you make less than $200,000 a year, it's going to be affordable, which is most of the people in our county. It's going to be extremely affordable. If you make less than $120,000, Ivy Leagues are free. So if we can use this as a tool to get these kids into a school that they might not otherwise get into, it could be life-changing for all of them. So this is why I love this sport. I love what it does for these kids. I love the health that it builds, and I love the community and the responsibility it builds. And so I really ask that y'all support this, not only for the economic investment, but also for the investment in our students.
I know some of you are probably wondering why we couldn't get anybody in South Carolina, but we'll try harder to get somebody in USC. It's tougher to, I'm teasing. Any questions for our group?
Questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Henderson.
Well, first of all, it's hard to follow all that's been mentioned, all the positives. I feel personally that that's a great thing. It's a great opportunity, and I hope that we can end up allowing this to happen. There's one question that you had mentioned about operation expenses at some point there. As far as, am I right in throwing out the figure of 10,000 or so that was the maximum that the school district was willing to put in as far as just regular basic maintenance, and up and beyond that, what would happen in that case?
Okay. No, the YMCA agreed to pay all maintenance costs, any maintenance in single ticket items that are more than $10,000, the Clover School District agreed to cover. So in our world, typical expenses are $2,000 to $5,000 for a pump. But when you get inside to a dehumidifier, it may be $150,000. So the school district is agreeing to cover those major maintenance costs, and the YMCA is paying what I'd call the day-to-day normal things that are going to happen. And that's given us great faith in this project being successful.
And the county would not be held to anything else beyond
County is
this.
not being asked for any expenses for operations. About 60% of our revenues come from membership, about 25% from program fees, and about 5 or 10% from donations. We take donations and give scholarships. Some people can't afford a Y membership, we're aware of that, and that's where scholarships come in. And I don't know, I guess about 10% of our members are on some type of scholarship.
And again, all this, what's been mentioned is very exciting to me, and I hope to the rest of my colleagues, but this also cries out for a larger than normal, multi-level, multifamily building called a hotel. That I'm open to. And I hope I can see that coming on as well, and possibly, well, not possibly, I'm certain it will end up generating quite a bit of new residual, revolving, if you will, H-tax as well.
We think the YMCA will help fill a void for recreation in that area, and this is a partnership. And that's the way YMCA's grow now. It's very hard to raise capital in York County. We're a great county to live in, but finding seven-figure gifts like you would in Charlotte or even Spartanburg, there are places that we don't get those gifts. So it's partnerships. The school district is a partner. We're asking you to be a partner. The project, by the way, is a $15 million project, and then the outdoor pool is a $3.5 million project. So it's a fairly sizable project. Anything else?
Questions? Mr. Johnson?
Mo, help me if you would. I mean, y'all are talking 4 swim meets. If you heat the pool, you think you can go to 6 swim meets in any given year. Ultimately, this is about tourism dollars.
Right.
Hospitality tax, while the story is a great story, and I'm a believer in the why, as you well know, this story has to be about the best use of H-tax dollars. And as I'm sitting here, obviously, and I guess my problem is, and you're the only guy in town right now. I haven't seen no one else has applied, no one has looked at it and told me how they're going to stack up dollar-wise. Do you all have a plan from day one to get 6 events here? I mean, tell me how you're going to get from 0 to 6 day one.
Good, Tim, do you want to respond to that? This is really Tim's area of expertise.
This weekend was our all-state banquet, and during those is our board meetings, and I'm actually the coach's representative on the board for State of South Carolina Swimming. And basically, on March 15th, you have to submit bids for the following year. I've already requested that if the building does come and we open by next summer, we will be granted access to run as many meets as we want, except for the long course state championship at the end of July. That would be the only weekend we couldn't run a meet next summer. If the building opens Memorial Day, or if it opens at any point, we can run a meet whenever. And actually the YMCA regional meet, which is the meet we would more likely go after right away, the bids aren't even due until June 1st of 2016. So, and the bidding process is very simple. You just submit an application and it's $25. And you have to pay sanctioning fees on the back end of the meet, but that $25 is taken out of something as you already paid it. It's a very simple process. Most of the meets are not a bidding process. If you just want it, you get it. But some of the meets, like a state championship, a regional championship, sometimes there's a bidding war for that, but it's not really a war. It's just you present your facility, you present the other facility, and if this facility is built the way it's been planned to be built, there's no facility like it, especially for a YMCA regional championship.
Where will 1,100 out of town, 550 out of town participants, 1,100 total people, where are they all going to park? I mean, how big is it? Yeah, not being from Clover, I have no sense of this facility in general.
Where are they going to park?
Yeah, where they, yeah. I mean,
Okay, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, 275 parking places? On-site. Yeah, 250. On-site at the Y. Plus, we have a soccer field with grass that you could park on, But even more important than that, we're right beside Crowders Creek Elementary.
Right.
And it's just perfect, and Dr. Sosty has already said that that's open and available. I don't know, I guess they have 300 or 400 cars. So parking will not be a problem. Bleacher seating is fine. If you've ever been to these swim meets, people will bring a lawn chair, plus you have bleacher seating. And swim meets are a little different than other events. It's not a 2-hour softball game. It's an all-day event. People sort of come and go. Nobody stays at the meet for 12 hours. They may go into the gym. They may get in their car and listen to music, or they'll wander outside and sort of hang around. So even though they're there, they're in and out of the building. It will hold this many people. With Tim, I'm very comfortable that we'll get the meets. There is a bit of balance in the need for the local community because they don't want to give up the pool every weekend. You know, if you've got young kids, you don't want to give up every Saturday. We might be able to get that, a few more meets out of it. Supply and demand would come into play at some point too. But another thing Tim said that's really important, this is a one-of-a-kind facility. This will be the preferred facility. When Charlotte Mac, or the Aquatic Center in Charlotte, is bidding on a 50-meter pool in May, June, July, August, September, and our YMCA is bidding on a pool, we'll win. You know, would you rather be inside for 2.5 days in a harsh environment, or would you rather be outside? Yeah, it might be hot. It might be, but we'll have shade structure. We'll figure that out. You know you'd rather be outside. Everybody would. This is going to be, we're going to get all the meets we can handle. That's my opinion.
And I know you have a coming representative from Clover. What's the timeline on the building of the school? Excuse me, not the school, the building of this facility. When should it be completed?
We have put in the contract documents that the building would be substantially complete in July of 16, with the outdoor water park feature in August of 16. That's what's currently on the bid documents. Now, we have asked for an accelerated schedule for a May completion to see what that dollar amount would be for the board to decide if they were to award tonight.
All right.
The base bid is in July and August.
So we're looking at 2017 before you could theoretically really hold meets, if you're looking at all. I mean, you might hold something in September, October, but okay.
You'd probably get 1 or 2 in, but we wouldn't want to even make that decision until probably late winter, when we get further on.
And I know that this is important to the Clover School District. Curious, why wasn't this part of a bond referendum for Clover? Why wasn't this included?
I think the Clover School Board felt like they were putting in a lot, $15 million, and the community should step up and do their part. And that's where, when we started our fundraising campaign, of the complex, the 2 pools together is $3.5 million. Clover Schools have said they will put in $1.8 million. That leaves a balance of 1.7. They just felt like I don't think it was, did they have the money or not? I don't think that was the issue. I can't speak for them. I think the issue for them was the community should step up and do part of this too, because it's for the whole county.
That's it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bell, would it be safe to say that in between these meets and the time span there from a local standpoint, talking about tourism / revenue generated through H-Tax, we all know that a lot of our area, a lot of the H-Tax is generated probably maybe as much as 80% of our own local people. So therefore, what I'm getting at is, a lot of these folks in between these meets, would it be safe to say that hardly anyone will go home after any event, or whether it be coming there to walk or to swim, or whatever they may be participating in, a lot of those folks will not go home to cook for their kids. They will go buy things. Is that correct?
The swim team members rarely leave the pool once they get there. And I say that in Rock Hill, the Aquatic Center, we have meets. I've never seen anybody get in their car and go leave. There's just, first of all, they don't want to leave their friends, and then there's meetings going on, and you might have a relay race, and somebody pops out, and you have to pop in for the team, and it would be rare for somebody to go home. And
Now
if your last meet was at 7 o'clock, and the meet was going on to 10 at night, no, you would go home at 7. You wouldn't stay around to the very end unless the coach wanted you to.
That's a given as far as the participants at the meets, but I'm talking about everyone in between, local folks, and strictly, a lot of those folks obviously will be going and buying and, to the different restaurants and whatnot, not going home to cook. And
Yes.
so forth.
I don't think any of the local people would go home. And I might add that when they did the estimates, remember it was 700 swimmers, but Dr. Brookover's estimates had 550. So he didn't count the 150 locals at all.
Right.
So really,
So
that's
this is
why
gonna
I'm
be a
saying the
bonus.
numbers are very conservative. If you added that in, it's a lot more revenue, because and I know that they aren't going to bring a bag lunch or whatever. They're going to come in and pop out to Wendy's or whatever the team does. So,
And food will not be served on site, correct?
sometimes there'll be a little hamburger bar or whatever. I don't know if we would buy pizza. We would buy from a vendor. We're not able to sell cook food ourselves. I don't think we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, I was told that would not be happening, because the sole purpose, Dr. Sosny even
Yeah.
mentioned that it was to be driven.
Yeah.
For it to go elsewhere.
That would be correct. We
to
don't
buy.
have no commercial kitchen there of anything of that type. We might have a coach's hospitality room, something like that, but even then, you'd buy that food from a vendor and they'd bring it in, so.
Yes, okay.
Just you'd eat on site.
Mr. Winkler.
Couple of things. First of all, thank you for coming out tonight and answering our questions. Excuse me. I've been a member and a supporter of the local Y for a long time. Mr. Black was in my office last week. So I appreciate what the Y does. My concern, I echo a little bit of the concern that Mr. Johnson did as far as, not having a whole lot else to look at this point, and awarding a substantial amount of money to the first person that happens to get in the door. I would love to have seen some numbers, and I don't know if you can do this off the top of your head, but as far as what the Rock Hill Aquatic Center does as far as meets and what kind of, economic impact, that kind of thing, so we'd have something to compare to.
I actually do have that, because I have to submit it for the accommodation tax for the city. We applied for that, and they granted that we had $40,000 in expenses, and they matched the 50-50, so they'll match $20,000 to help us run the events that we bring in. And their formula is that we run those 7 events a year, and they calculate through their formula that we bring in anywhere from, I believe it's $750,000 per year since 2006 to up to $950,000. I think that's overall income, not actual tax income that would come in. But and as Mobile said, we actually, our vendors that we use are all local York County vendors. We don't buy from outside of York County. I'm a big believer in supporting the area with any kind of food we buy for the coaches coming in. It's all local restaurants. But it's anywhere from $750,000 to $950,000. I think one year was a little over $1 million, but we ran like 3 meets that other teams couldn't run, so we ended up taking those meets from them. So.
And you probably said this, but again, what's your average attendance at one of the Rock Hill meets? As far as participants?
Participants, anywhere from 350 to 750. We run some smaller ones because they do drag on, some of them. So earlier in the season, when we're trying to get everybody to believe in the competitiveness of swimming, we run 1 or 2 smaller ones, and then by December, I think that one was over. That was over 700. 700 were in that meet, and only about 100 were from York County. Everybody else was outside of York County.
Thank you.
What is your largest swim meet you've had, Tim, so far? Number of swimmers?
It was 3 years ago. It was regionals was right at 850, I think. And
Some-
that was about.
Some of his meets are one-day meets, we're proposing all these will be weekend meets. These will be large meets of 2.5 days, not 1-day meets.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Cox.
Following up on that, on the questions that were asked, let me just first say thank you for coming out. It is so exciting to see students get involved in government and see how this works. I grew up in a family where my mother was an avid swimmer, still holds records. Annie still holds records at the Y.
Yeah, she does.
My sister was built like my mother and was very effortless in swimming, and I sank like a rock. So I got like the hardest worker, and my sister got most valuable player. So I admire the swimmers for what they do. And I think the question that's being asked, and this is kind of really my concern, is that it seems like there was some bit of a rush on this, and this is where you're going to hear me later when we get into this. Why is it that we didn't have, and how could we do better to have more time to vet out the options that we have for this? And I know that you're under circumstances that put you in a place that the contract has to be decided. But one of the questions that I have kind of gets to, for instance, the Rock Hill Aquatic Center. Was that subsidized at all by any county funds?
I'm sorry,
Was that the Rock Hill Aquatic Center?
Oh.
Was that subsidized by county funds?
Yeah, it was, no, it was built entirely with a bond from, a state-issued bond for Rock Hill School District 3. And there was no funds from the YMCA or from the community in getting that going.
Okay.
And I might add, that facility loses money. We didn't make a very good deal, to be quite honest, but we committed to it, and we stayed with it in spite of that. As far as the timing of it, we've been ready. The form itself wasn't ready, and you can ask any of the state staff. When it became ready, within 2 days, we had it completed. So we were back in November strategizing on how we were going to raise this money. That's when it became obvious that if we were going to make it happen, we'd have to do it ourselves. And so we were inquiring then, and as soon as the form was available, and we were very in touch with that committee on that form through Mr. Huckabee and the others on that committee. So we were ready, and I wish it wasn't so fast either, of course. And I hate being first in line. But I don't think we should be punished just because we've had our act together. We've been ready to go. Why the pressure moving forward? The school district has contractors on a timeline, and they're ready to go. Also, as I said, they've got to start moving dirt. They're going to move dirt for probably 2 months. This site is on a rock bed, so it's not simple. It's going to be a little bit complicated getting it ready, and we really need to have a roof on by late fall. Or, once the cold, wet season's here, it's a little bit tough to complete the job.
Mr. Chairman.
Hey, let's get around a little bit and let other people talk for a second.
Real quick, just if the vote does not go your way tonight, what is the expected cost if you had to come back again and apply and it was done as a second phase? How would that affect the project? If you had to do the outdoor.
We've been told that if we don't get the $1 million gift, not get the $1 million, the project's not a go. What you're asking, though, I think, is what if it's a month or so down the road? And I'll yield to Kelly on that.
We have not ran those numbers. I couldn't tell you. If the vote is a no-go and the YMCA has not awarded the $1 million, I don't want to put words into the school board's mouth, which way they're going to vote, but I don't think it's going to get built. Whether they decide to raise the money years down the road to come back and do it at a later date, I don't know. That would be the why. That would not be the school district.
I see one more. I don't see anybody else, so I'll let, do you want to? Mr. Roddy.
Did I hear correctly, was it last year or the year before that you guys did a school bond for $15 million? Was somewhere around $15 million over in Clover?
There's more.
I don't know about the last bond in Clover.
There was a school bond in March of 14, and it was for 67.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so I heard somebody say something about $15 million early in the presentation.
That's the cost of this facility.
Okay,
Cost of this.
okay.
But it included a new middle school, new elementary school, which we are under construction on now. So we're 5 projects total in that bond. This is one of them.
So had $1 more million been added to that, you guys wouldn't have to come here for for this additional $1 million? Just $1 million?
Yes.
Okay.
I might add that before they put this bond package together, they had a committee serve 1,800 voters. Which parts of the project did they like or not like? 76% said we like having the YMCA as a part of this, and the aquatic center portion as a part of this bond referendum. So the voters were.
So there was some money put in there to go
Well,
towards this?
to build the YMCA, which had indoor pools and a gym.
Okay.
There was no money
Not
allocated
outside.
for the outdoor
Okay.
pool, and it was not discussed at that time as being part of as far as the outdoor pool.
That's correct. There was
Okay.
$0 put in for any outdoor pools.
Okay.
From
Gotcha.
day one.
That was never budgeted.
So I'm gonna let Mr. Henderson make his comment, Mr. Johnson ask his question, and then I'll wrap it up if Mr. Williams is,
I'll wait till it comes up.
okay.
I just want to say that this committee, we have worked long and hard. We have put in a tremendous amount of hours to, and I'm not even talking about this application, not even talking about this grant. We worked so long, so hard for such, and lost a lot of sleep. Sacrificed our homes at times, sacrificed ourselves in order to help restructure something that was fairly broken, something that was not fair, something that was not maybe even feasible, because we were not even operating by our own ordinances that had been going on for years. We fixed it. This is the best shape it's been, maybe since its inception. I hope we will not punish the first true application that truly qualifies and truly meets the criteria of what it's all designed to do. There's other legitimate things that's going to come along as well. And, but this is what it's for. I will feel like that I have just totally spit in the wind. And it's coming back, to those that have worked so hard as well. It's the same situation. And I know we've got some new folks on board, but please, trust me, we have fought hard, not just for my district, to fix something that was broken. And I'm asking you to honor that tonight.
Mr. Johnson ask his question.
I'll defer till we actually debate
Okay.
this.
And I appreciate everything the Y does. I was part of the Rock Hill School Board when we voted for that
that's right.
natatorium.
And y'all made a great deal for the school. Congratulations.
I do watch out for the taxpayers' dollars, I'll give you that.
Yes, you do. If I could add one conclusive remark.
Okay.
We're asking you for $1 million in revenue for a $3.5 million project that's going to generate $4 million over the next 25 years. As a taxpayer, I like that deal.
I don't want to assume when we have the discussion, when we vote on this, I want to ask you a few questions. And here again I want to say again, it's great what you do. It's great for the kids. Forgive me for saying kids, you're a little bigger than that now, but for the students, it's a super service that's provided. And I'll go back to what's been said. My heartburn was we had one presentation and we're having to jump on that and not properly vet the others, which I think is our due diligence to obligation to do. We should vet all the options, or the committee and then the council. One concern I had though was the balance of operational costs. If I heard correctly, the Rock Hill Natatorium ballpark's about $750,000 revenue a year. I noticed on this, y'all are considering the indoor facility to projected do an annual income of almost 3 times that, 1.9. I'm a little uneasy about that. I know the first couple of years you're having the school district pay utilities to kind of let things get at an even, a level platform. Another concern I have is that when you talk about membership as added to the revenue, you give an additional membership revenue when you throw in the outdoor pool. So you have an amount for the indoor pool, and then you have extra for the outdoor pool. I can maybe see that a little bit, but I don't think that's gonna be that big of a jump. So that's another concern I have about kind of vetting some of these numbers. But here again, I don't wanna drag this out because we're gonna talk about it, but the bottom line is, well, let me ask one other question. Has any swim team member been turned away for a lack of infrastructure?
Infrastructure?
Facility?
Not that I'm aware of. As far as enough lanes for the swimmers we have now for a typical school year, we're fine. The dilemma is, and if you don't understand this, when you see Summer Olympics, they're going 50 meters.
Right.
That's 50 meters is a summer season. You don't swim 50 meters during the school year. So it's basically a May through September sport, the 50-meter pool is. As far as revenue, let me quickly explain that. We surveyed our Fort Mill membership after about 3 years of operation. 13, and yes, we do have 2 pools. 13% of the membership in Fort Mill say they join for the water park, whereas not the indoor pool. So we took our membership numbers and 13% of the potential members times the annual fee for the pool. That's how we got those numbers.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate it.
So it is in addition to.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. Next item's Chris Frazier. Chris, are you? Yep.
Mr. Chairman, based on Ms. Milner's update, I'd like to withdraw from the agenda tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. And there was nobody that signed up for a public forum, so we'll move forward. And there's no public hearings? Is that correct? None? You said none? Okay.
That's correct.
So our first order of business is council to consider second reading of an ordinance entitled to further amend an ordinance entitled to establish operating and capital budgets for the operation of the county government of York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, to provide for grant funds from the South Carolina Power Team for the purpose of funding additional appropriations for the Western Speculative Building, and to provide for other fiscal matters related to county government. Do I have a? Okay. Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And let's see, we have a rezoning action council to consider second reading of case number 1504, rezoning property from PD to RC1 at 4030 Country Overlook in the Fort Mill community. Second reading. Have a motion.
Move to approve second reading.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Johnson.
I voted against this last time, and in the 2 weeks since, I have been able to talk to my member on the Planning Commission who voted against this and have a better understanding of this rezoning, and I will vote in favor of this tonight because this land cannot be subdivided. This will not increase. We're not looking to increase density. We're looking to do one house, and that was the question that I had 2 weeks ago when I voted no. So I want to clarify why I'm changing my vote.
If there's no further comments, question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consider first reading by title only of an ordinance authorizing a second amendment to the intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Rock Hill and York County relating to the Textile Corridor redevelopment plan, the amended downtown redevelopment plan, the Red River redevelopment plan, the Manchester Village redevelopment plan, and other matters related thereto.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to move that we suspend the rules and go into executive session for purposes of getting legal advice and updating on the negotiation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. What we can do is go to the room in the back. We'll just discuss that, and we'll leave the other executive session matters to come back to at the end of the meeting. So let's move to the back. We're back in session. We'll have a motion. Mr. Henderson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Council, due to time restraint and for these other issues that the folks are waiting for us to do the business, I'd like to move that we defer in new business item 1, ordinance authorizing a second amendment to the intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Rock Hill and York County to the end of the meeting after executive session, should we choose to vote on it in any way at that point.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item. Council to consider approval of the hospitality grant in the amount of $1 million for funding a portion of the Clover Outdoor Aquatic Center.
I'd like to move to approve the application for the Clover YMCA for the Clover Outdoor Aquatic Center.
Do we have a second?
I second for discussion.
Okay, discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to start off by saying, when I was on the, I think it was the Health and Public Safety a couple of years ago, I met with these guys over in that area about some soccer fields and ball fields, and we went back and forth, and we were looking at doing something over in the area, and we never got around to it because the plan wasn't as well put together as what's been presented here tonight. And I hate we weren't able to follow through with the soccer fields and softball fields a little over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. But after what the presentation I heard tonight and some of the background, and you see some more skin being put in the game by that area, it's a much better plan for us to get involved with this aquatic center and outdoor water park than it would have been for us to give over, I think it was somewhere around $8 million to do the ball fields and stuff over in that area. So I told Bruce that I definitely would throw my support behind these efforts, despite what we went through with the soccer fields. This is a much better proposal. There's much more skin in the game. There's a plan to fund the day-to-day operations for it, as opposed to the other plan that we saw with the soccer fields and softball fields. There wasn't any day-to-day operation plan. There wasn't any maintenance plan on it. So I just think the ask for this is much smaller than what we were looking at a couple years ago to go to the ball field situation. I think this is a much more solid effort to ask the taxpayers to help out in that area. It will give them more avenues and a bigger avenue to provide, not only just for a tourism aspect, which I know that's what the hospitality tax money is for, but it also adds to the quality of life of what those citizens out there are going through, and give them more stake in what York County is all about. And you know, if we can't get behind a small effort, which, you know, by no stretch of the imagination is $1 million a small effort, but for what it can bring for years to come, I think it's a small price tag to pay from this council and out of the hospitality tax money. And like it's been said, not only tonight, but in previous meetings, that how much hospitality tax money that area pumps into the overall fund. So I haven't said that, you know, I'll go on record as supporting this effort. I know it's kind of a rush situation, but I think the plan is a solid plan to move forward with. And I know we all like to have a little extra time to vet the situation, to dot some I's and cross the T's, but I think this is much more solid than what's been presented to us in some other avenues for the area. So I would like to start off by saying I support this effort here tonight.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I said I'd say my comments here, and hopefully I'll do it once. There's several good things about this application. One of the things that sticks about me most is the maintenance is taken care of. When we, as Bruce talked about earlier, we looked at this process early on, and that was one thing we decided we wanted that the maintenance to be taken care of in these applications. That is. Also, it is an H-Tax application, and they're asking for the, to fund the outside swimming pool. I can see how having an outside swimming pool would add an advantage to a swimming application. Didn't know about all the 50-meter stuff until today. I appreciate explanation, appreciate you being here. Another good thing is the hospitality tax, the commission actually recommended it. And they've gone through the process, and I've assumed that they've done everything and really like it. Another thing that stands out is that it's a YMCA, Clover School District, and partnership. And I think to save money for all of our citizens, we're going to have to look at that going into the future, partner with each other and more collaboration. Some of the stuff that's not so good that I'm a little concerned about. One is the schedule. I mean, with the recommendation that came out of the Finance and Operations Committee was we need to go ahead and put this on the agenda or it's going to be too late. And usually I don't like being put in that position. However, your explanation of that makes a whole lot of sense, and I appreciate that. I got some concern about the math. I see the economic impact. What we're talking about here, though, is H-Tax dollars and generating H-Tax dollars to pay for it. I'm not sure that this project does that, but I have to assume that the hospitality tax has looked at that and is looking at the global picture. I know I get you're spending $1 million on a $3 million project and generate $4 million of income. I see that. But also what Mr. Roddy was just talking about if there has been an argument that Lake Wylie has not had, gotten a fair share of these funds before, that argument is only going to work until we run out of money that they can pay back. And that's the thing that I want to be concerned about. You know, if we do a couple of projects and they don't generate enough H-Tax to actually pay for them, then we can only fund the projects that we generate. But like I say, I think that I've got to put some faith into my H-Tax committee, especially right out of the gate. That does a lot of good things for the community. Unfortunately, those don't qualify for H-Tax expenses, and that's what we have to look at. But overall, I think those are my comments and concerns, and I think you get a very favorable presentation, and I appreciate that. And I'm a Y kid. There's no doubt about that. So that's good or bad. I don't know. It might make you vote against it, but I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Winkler.
I expressed concerns earlier that I have and have had. I do have to agree, I am on the Finance and Operations Committee, and we didn't have an application ready. We were hashing that thing out in meetings so that it's hard for you to file one when we don't have one. And so I came into this evening leaning toward a no vote on this, just from what we had seen so far and from what we had been told and from what I saw in the committee meeting, that kind of thing, or the application. As I look at it more tonight and you made your presentations, I think about the fact that, we didn't have an application ready for anybody to apply, and somebody has to be first. I have adjusted my thoughts on this. I still have some concerns about some of the numbers too, as far as whether or not, exactly how much hospitality tax it will generate, because I do feel like that, a lot of it is Y membership that we've been talking about, and that doesn't generate a whole lot of hospitality tax. But these meets, if you're right and you do get enough of those meets, and again, that's a guess at this point because we don't know what you'll get. If your numbers are close and we do an 8-year funding on this, then we're pretty close to, y'all will pay back in hospitality tax what it costs each of those years in that. So I kind of look at worst at this point, it's a break even for us, hopefully. And if your numbers are right, then it is a moneymaker for the first few years. When you divide your 3.4 million by 25 years, that's 137,000 a year is what your numbers are. and we're talking about 125 for 8 years if we break it out that way. So, thank you for coming tonight, because it may have helped your cause some.
Mr. Johnson.
I am not a Y kid like Mr. Williams, but I am certainly a supporter of the YMCA, and have made my children, well, they haven't made them, they've wanted to go to camp and all of the things, and I certainly support the Fort Mill YMCA with my time and my dollars. I'm going to echo a lot what Mr. Winkler said. I came in tonight very concerned about this. Came in here, my concern is the timeline. It wasn't that I did not think this was a worthy project. It was that I believed that we should not be asked to turn something around in 3 weeks. And that is really what we've been asked to do. We've been asked to vote this out of committee 2 weeks ago, and then tonight try to make a decision on your numbers. Tourism has to drive these decisions. This is not a, yes, there is a benefit to the community, but tourism dollars is what this is about. There is a statute. The statute is crystal clear that we are to build, that tourism is supposed to be considered, and that we're supposed to build things in order, sports-related first. I helped write that ordinance. Maintenance, you're taking care of maintenance, which was one of the largest things in our thing. There are two questions the council have to answer tonight, and so far, we're only talking about one. And I want to say this. First question is will we approve this? And if the answer is yes, how will we pay for this? And I have heard no one say anything about paying for it. This year, age tax is expected to generate $1.8 million in new revenue. There's about $5 million sitting in an account waiting to be spent. We certainly have the ability to start spending some money. At our Finance and Operations meeting, Beth Latham said that she believed we could bond up to $10 million, if I am correct. And she felt very comfortable with us bonding up to $10 million. If you want to spend $125,000 over 8 years, every year, you have to realize the impact that's going to have on other requests. You're now taking $125,000 out of the system that you're not going to get back for 8 years. If we choose to fund all of these by paying as we go and not bonding them in some way, we're going to be very limited in what we can do, especially on larger ticket items. Bonding at this point, I think Beth had run the numbers at around 4% at the 10 million, and she felt very confident that we would be lower than, we'd be in the 3 range once we went out to bond. So I think there needs to be some serious discussion and possibly an amendment to the motion to say how you're going to pay for this and how we're going to, how this is going to happen. That's my, on that. I'm gonna say I am as torn on this as many votes that I've taken. I sit here, I believe in the why, I believe in this project. Ultimately, here's my problem. I am looking at one item, and I have no idea what's next, and I have $10 million to spend. If I've decided to bond us out 100%, there's only $10 million. And without knowing what other worthy projects there are, I have no way to say, is this a well-spent $1 million? If I had to bet, I would say it's a well-spent $1 million because it's the YMCA and I know the people who run it, and it's well spent. But it's hard to say in a vacuum that this is $1 million well spent. And I am struggling to support this project, not because it's not worthy, but because I don't know what's coming. And tomorrow, I know that there are at least 2 applications before the HTAX committee. If we had time, and we should have more time, and in the future, and tomorrow at the HTAX committee, I promise you the Finance and Operations Committee will stress to them the importance of having more time in these deliberations. Then I might be able to say, yes, this is the worthy one. This is the one of the 5 we got. If we rank them 1, 2, 3, and we're only going to do the top 3, this is one of the top 3. I can't say that as I sit here, and because of that, I don't know how I support this at this point. I am disappointed to even say that, and I would hope that the Clover School District would give us that time, would consider giving us a month, 4 more weeks to let us come back and try to deliver this money to them. But without being able to see, I'm not comparing apples to apples. I'm not even comparing them to oranges because I'm not comparing it to anything. I've got one basket, and that's the only basket I can see. So I'd like to see more. And so because of that, I'm not going to be able to approve this tonight, but I will certainly be willing to reconsider this in the next 2 to 4 weeks once I've been able to see more. And hopefully the Clover School Board hasn't moved so far along that they can't do a simple change order to their building package to make this happen. So unfortunately, solely because of that, I'm not going to be able to support tonight.
Are you amending the motion?
I'm not amending.
I'll do
Don't have
that.
to figure it out.
Sir?
I'll make that, I think, I move to amend the motion that the financing is $125,000 spread over 8 years.
Yeah, yeah, Michael, refresh my memory. Anybody can make the amended motion?
Correct.
As long as Bruce accepts it.
Well,
No,
you can vote on the amendment and then you vote on the main motion.
Okay, so.
Unless they're made by.
We have an amended motion. Do we have a second?
Now, what was that again, please?
To pay it for 8 years.
Yeah, I just moved that the financing that they applied for, referred to in their application, was $125,000 over 8 years. And Mr. Johnson is correct. That needs to be part of the motion.
I can second that one.
I accept
Yeah.
that, but let me make something clear here. If we're pulling in 350 to 400,000 in my district, this is a very worthy cause.
Yeah. Well, I just want to add discussion on that motion.
Yeah, would you re-clarify your motion
All
one
right.
more time? Because
Yeah,
I've had a
the-
lot of.
With
words
the
flying
original,
around.
yeah, the original motion was to fund it. Didn't talk about how to fund it. The application said that they would be willing to accept, and the H-Tax Committee suggested $125,000 a year spread over 8 years. I'm simply saying that that's what we do that. I share Mr. Johnson's concerns about financing. I've heard talk about a bond and floating them all out there, and I think that we need to consider all those together, which that's why I think the only way to consider this one apart is if it stands on its own and is financed that way. Even 2 weeks, I don't think would be enough time to adequately consider it in a bond referendums, and I feel for it. I'm actually torn as well, but the fact that part of the delay was our own fault sits with me some. The Clover School District, maybe they could wait on a change order, but I know the things that we've sat through with you, especially with grading, you start delaying that kind of stuff, it causes problems. But I agree. I wish that we could, when we look at the bond, I want to look at all of them together. So if this one cannot be done that way, then that's the best way that I would see to do it.
Forgive me, I might be having a senior moment. Would you just say your amended motion one more time?
Of the 100.
Why don't you have the county attorney read it to you?
Or if you prefer that, I don't think you wrote it down, though.
I bet he can remember it. But anyway, I move that we fund this with a $125,000 grant spread over 8 years. In other words, they will receive $125,000 for the next year, for the next 8 years, and they will use that to pay for it either upfront or however they want to.
We did have a second, so Mr. Henderson.
I'll second.
Yeah.
You can second, it don't matter, but
Yeah, go ahead.
as applied for, basically, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that gets you
Correct.
to it, that gets you to the million.
Yeah.
Now,
Mr. Roddy.
I just had a quick question. I know there was some concern with Mr. Johnson about how would we finance this. Since he mentioned, how we would do it, and Chad just made the motion over the 8-year period, would that address your concern to support the motion?
Actually, that motion makes it even from my standpoint, worse, and I'm gonna be honest. And this is why. You just locked down, that motion just locked down 7% of all of this money for the next 8 years.
But they're generating.
Can't get it back.
Look at what they're generating annually.
But yeah, if you assume that, but the problem is, if we look at it today, we're talking about locking down 7% of all the revenue this bond, this H-tax is gonna create for the next 8 years. I would much rather see this council bond this out over a 20-year period, and because I don't, and without, and the problem is, Beth's not even here, so without Beth here,
She's in.
oh, well, let's see if Beth can come on
Well,
down, like the Price
I
is Right.
think I can
I'd
address
like to
that.
hear, I'd like to see what this does to our, does the bonding authority go from a 10 million down to a much lower number because you lock this 125,000? And I don't, well, it has to have some impact.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I guess the reason that it makes it better for me is one of the options is to go ahead and give them the $1 million now.
Paid up front.
We have the $1 million in the bank. We give it to them now and we're done. We give it to them over 8 years, then it's still there, and then we can see it's coming and we can plan for it. I mean, and we've got money in the bank because we have been hesitant to fund these projects. So of the three there, that one, I mean, I see your concern. The reason that it makes more sense than waiting to put it in the bond for two reasons. One is, like I said, I think it's gonna take us a lot more time to pick the projects for $10 million worth of bond. Two, bond is interest. This is not interest. This is basically borrowing money from ourselves. Whether, doing it over 8 years is borrowing money from ourselves. Doing the $1 million all at once is just going ahead and taking it out of the account.
I'd much rather see you give them $1 million up front. Take it out of reserves than I would 125. I'm just worried about the long-term bonding effect of saying that we're now indebted, we're carrying a liability for the next 8 years. That's why people get 20-year mortgages and not 10-year mortgages.
Yeah, but-
The 20-year amortization.
And that's why I asked you to keep repeating it, because I didn't think it really addressed what he was saying.
Well,
That's why I was getting a little.
Well, and I guess we're just seeing it two different ways. I'm saying you got $1 million, you know you're gonna give this grant. You just leave it in the bank, and you just take. Yeah, it would be foolish, knowing you got 125,000, that you got $1 million that you're gonna give away, and then to give all the money away and depend on the grant. Maybe that should have been more clear.
Can we ask Beth?
Well, hang
Beth's
on.
here now.
Beth, can you come forward a second to address Mr. Johnson's question?
And Beth, I'll try to summarize. You, at our last meeting, you had said that you felt comfortable with up to a $10 million bonding authority. If the council tonight said we're gonna do $125,000 a year over an 8-year period, what do you still feel comfortable for future projects saying 10 million, or does that number now decrease? And I'm sure you've done all that math in your head, so.
Our hopes in that $10 million amount that I gave out was in hopes that our H-tax collections are gonna continue to grow above the 1.8. Like I'm estimating we'll probably get 2 million this year, maybe 2 million next year. So that amount I gave you that evening quickly. It was based on having growth in the H-tax collections. It was also based on the fact that we have some money sitting in fund balance that maybe could be set aside for that purpose.
So do you even if, so I guess the question ultimately is, if the council tonight votes to do it with the 125,000 a year over 8 years, you still feel relatively good with the 10 million bonding. All right, fair enough. That answers my question.
Mr. Henderson.
I'd just like to reiterate the fact that even through the past 6 or 4 or 5 bad years, from 2009, which was our worst years, getting slowly better, I'd like to reiterate the fact that even during these down years, we had increases in the H-tax. It has steadily grown even through the slow time. And, so folks, I mean, and we're talking about $5 million that we've been sitting on. So it's time to make a move. We're gonna know the difference between late and left if we don't make a move. Thank you.
That's right.
I just want to make, and Bruce just touched on it, since we've gotten on council almost 5 years ago, we've pretty much had the same amount of money, if not more now than we did when we first got up here. And we've been talking about having this H-tax money just sitting there. I think that's what prompted the Lake Wiley Clover area to come after the ball fields, because we had such a large amount of money sitting there. If we don't start addressing some of the applications or some of the projects that come up, this money is just going to continue to grow, and we're going to get, obviously, more and more people are becoming aware of it, and they're going to start coming after the bigger project. But we can't wait. We can't not give this one, we can't let this one not stand on its own thinking there's something bigger or something better coming behind it. That's like getting to the altar, getting ready to get married and thinking, well, maybe the next one will be prettier than this one. So I mean, I mean, from the numbers and the skin in the game that they've put forward, either we, but I asked Robert earlier, why would we want to bond out money and pay interest on it when we have the money sitting? That's just like if you're going to buy a car, buy a house, if you got money in the bank, why borrow the money? And if we're going to make the commitment to it, and I don't think if there's any concern with, if we're going to make a commitment to give $125,000 over the next years, if that's going to hurt our bond rating, we can kill that concern, just fork over the $1 million and we have nothing on our books. I mean, that's the financial way to do it. If you don't want to carry any debt, you clear your books of any debt or promised debt and move on. That shouldn't hurt what we're able to bond out. And even if, and Beth just said it, even if we did carry that 125 a year for the next 8 years, it's not going to hurt what we're able to borrow in the future anyway. So that's not a substantial debt to us. If we're still going to have, what, $5 million or plus sitting with money coming in annually anyway. So the debt concern is really not, it's not a hindrance to us making the approval. And if it's acceptable to do the 8 years, 125,000, or if there's a concern that way, we have the money to give to them. If we're gonna make a commitment to give it to them, we have the money in the bank outside of us not getting interest on it while it's sitting. And I'm sure we're not getting a whole lot of interest with the county money just sitting. So either we write the check for $1 million or give it to them over the 8-year period. Either way, it doesn't hurt our financial standing with any situation that we're gonna be facing. But I like to see us make a move on it, because all too many times we get put in a situation where we'll kick the can down the road, we don't make a decision, and it'll be 6 months down the road and we're still talking about do that. Then the question may be, well, do you need an outdoor pool? You know, so they've presented a pretty good argument, pretty good package. And to me, from what I've seen, other proposals, there's a lot of skin in the game, from the school district to the community to the Y. You know, so this is a pretty good package from what I've seen. And had I saw this on the ball field situation 2.5 years ago, we'd probably been turning over dirt with some softball and soccer fields over in that area. But this has a lot of skin in the game.
Mr. Winkler.
Very quickly, I almost told you I was gonna lower my hand, but, you know, we're talking a lot about this. For me, I think the big thing is, as we've all said, you know, I don't know how long it's taken us to build up the 4 or 5 million or whatever's there, but it was taken in for us to spend on hospitality, you know, things. So, whether we do it, I think it's best decision which way is the best for the county. If we, you know, take it 125 a year out of the income that's coming in, or if we take 125 a year out of the 4 or 5 million that's sitting in the bank. Either way, to me, it's a funding thing. And I think sometimes, you know, we've talked over the last just a few months that I've been on council about sometimes we just have to, people elect us to make a tough decision. You know, we looked at what we're voting on later tonight with TIF. We argued, and some would say fought over building locations and courthouses and everything else. And sometimes you just, you know, I heard other council members say we just have to make a decision. So, you know, I think it's just, this is one that, you know, is a good idea, or, you know, a good application, a good presentation. I think time to make a decision.
Ms. Cox?
I guess I'll start out by saying what I'm hearing a lot of folks say. I'm torn. I'm extremely torn by this. I mean, this is $1 million, $1 million in taxpayer-funded money. And the question before us is not whether you support the initiative, it's whether or not we need to use H-tax dollars to pay for it. And while I agree that the first in should not be disadvantaged, I also think the first in should be scrutinized just as much as any of the others that would come in. And for me, it would be much better for me in knowing how this came before us if we had another month for us to consider this with the school district. And it has to do really with kind of me being fresh off campaign trail. When I was out knocking on doors, people were not asking for us to build anything else that attracted more people. They were asking for us to fix our current road situation, for us to look at the growth management. And H-tax dollars can be used on road infrastructure for existing tourism attractions. And right now, we need to be looking at that. Number one, we need to be making sure that we can take care of our road infrastructure to the existing tourism attractions, and we need to be putting our money there. Philosophically, I think that's what we need to be looking at, and I hope that our H-tax committee is looking at that when they're doing this. I also have a little bit of heartburn with how are we going to get into this competition. We have the Rock Hill Aquatic Center, which I understand from the presentation is not performing as well. Are we creating a situation where we're hurting ourselves by creating competition between two folks in the same county? I don't feel like I understand that well enough to feel good about where that's headed, because what we're talking about is maximizing the H-tax dollar, making sure that the rate of return and what we're spending it on is accomplishing the goals that we set out to accomplish. And so, again, I think it's a great idea if we had a reasonable amount of time to look at this, which in my opinion, I think we needed a little bit more time, then I might would have changed my vote, but I think I have to vote my conscience and vote with the top priorities that I'm gonna have in my mind in looking at any H-tax application.
So let me just wrap it up by saying that I want to keep it very simple from my viewpoint. I think the amended motion will probably win. So, I just want to point out, I'm for the Y. I voted for the nanatorium in Rock Hill. I think school boards and the Y are great partners. I'm a little uneasy about the county getting into that kind of partnership. But the bottom line, it was not vetted in my mind. It was just, well, here's the first one. We only got this one. We don't have anything, this is a great thing. Worthy cause? Absolutely. The western side of the county deserves their share. Absolutely. No arguments there. But I look at some of the numbers, and I deal with a lot of economics. I'm chairman of the I-77 Alliance. I look at them closely a lot. The projection of the income being 2.5, 3 times what the Rock Hill Nanatorium's doing, I don't see it. I hope it's correct. Like I said, not wanting to get into the Y business, I really don't want to compete with cities and towns and have rec departments. I think the county needs to be complementary to me, of course. One thing that's been out there long before I got on the council is the Ag Center. And I think that would be a worthy county complement to where we should put a lot of money, but I have a little bit of an issue, and here the bottom line for me is just didn't vet the other options, so I can't clearly go with this without hearing the other options. I'm not big on a gun to the head in terms of a time frame, having to just jump on it. When we did the nanatorium, 50 meters wasn't an issue. When they did the referendum for Clover, it wasn't an issue, and all of a sudden it becomes an issue. And I understand, well, it's a great opportunity. I get it, and that'll happen. But here again, it puts us in the Y business, and I just don't think the county needs to be there. And like I said, the economic numbers don't add up to me. There will not be a hotel that will build out there. You can count on that. It's not going to happen. The numbers aren't there to make it happen. So that being said, and my concerns and the fact we didn't vet the other options, I can't support this. So, question on the amended motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. I believe it passed 4-3. So that takes care of the other motion.
Well, no, actually, we either, if they accept it as a friendly amendment, we can do it that way, but we just voted on the amended motion. I would recommend that we just vote on the main motion now.
Yeah, gotta vote on the main one.
Well, okay, we'll do that and go through the motion. So we have a vote on the main motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. 4-3. Next item. Consider approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the Town of Clover and York County to provide animal control services within the corporate limits of the Town of Clover.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consider approval for application of calcium chloride to qualifying unpaved roads for financial year 2014, 2015, Road Maintenance General Fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 155, Section 155.478E8, in order to provide for an increase in the maximum number of temporary planned development signs, temporary weekend real estate signs, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Need a motion?
Move to approve. For sake of discussion.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Henderson.
This was rather surprising to me to see this, based upon a lot of the complaints and legitimate concerns that I've received, at least in my district, but I also know that it's taking place in other districts as well. And for the sake of safety, for the sake of basically just high-techly littering the highway, I feel like that, I mean, my goodness, why not stop? Let's don't stop here. Let's add another 50. I mean, by gosh, let's make sure they see them. Let's make sure Stevie Wonder can see them. I just feel like that we're just getting too extreme with the signage. I don't think we're having any problem drawing folks. I don't think we're having any trouble with growth as far as people wanting to come here. So I would like that to really be considered here, because I think we should find some type of a reduction compared to this as proposed, because I just think it's totally out of line and to the extreme. And I believe it's throughout the several districts, but before we know it, we're just going to be we're just going to have so many signs at so many intersections. This is going to start possibly causing wrecks and maybe even worse.
Mr. Johnson worked on this. You want to provide clarification?
Well, it's kind of once upon a time, I complained that there were 50 signs at every intersection. And the ordinance said there could only be 4. And somehow the answer has been now to say there can be 25 per neighborhood, not 4 anymore. If there are, I mean, I think I said way back when, let's have an ordinance, let's either enforce it or let's get rid of the ordinance. What I should have said is, let's either enforce the ordinance, get rid of the ordinance, but certainly don't make it worse. And I think this makes it worse, in my opinion. This bothers me. I can certainly, I've met with the builders, I've met with several builders, and what they've said is that it's not feasible to put out less than a certain amount of signs. It's not, money-wise, it just doesn't make sense to it. They can't pay people to go out and put up 4 signs. If you drive on any given Saturday and you get off on Gold Hill Road, or 160 on 77, you will see anywhere between 100 to 200 signs in the first quarter of a mile. Easy. Every weekend. I mean, it's just, if I believed that holding this down to 25 will make that better, there's a neighborhood, and I hate to call out a specific neighborhood, but there's a neighborhood on 160 that is just now beginning to go vertical. It is about a half a mile from the interstate. So what we're saying is that they can put 25 signs between the interstate and their neighborhood. Or they could put
Anywhere.
5 between there. They put basically one every 1/10 of a mile. Then they could put another 5 on the other side, and they could put another 10 on 160, just to draw you to this one neighborhood. I'm struggling with this. I would like to see, and I want this, I want us to pass something that's meaningful, or I want us to say, let's not do anything with this. I'd like to see us come in and say, look, if 25 is the number, that's fine. But let's limit your signs per intersection. When I drive up to any given intersection, I can show you pictures if you'd like. There are 10, 15 signs for the neighborhood, for one neighborhood at that intersection. And they tell me they have to put up that many because there are so many other people putting up signs. Well, let's limit it to 1 sign per neighborhood per intersection. Or limit it to 4, because there are 4 corners to an intersection, I get that, to 4 signs per intersection. If the goal of this is to reduce the clutter along our roads, let's reduce the clutter. I don't care if there's a limit to the signs. You can have 100 signs, as long as you're only putting 4 per intersection. But just by pure definition, we're going to lower the amount of signs in the area. It'd be impossible not to. And my goal was not to drive builders out of business and not allow people to find their neighborhoods. We're growing at about 9% in Fort Mill. They obviously know where we are. But I don't agree with just this blanket. If the goal is to reduce it, to increase your advertising dollar, so to speak, then let's limit the amount of signs at an intersection. Spread these out. Maybe they have to be a 1/4 of a mile apart. Maybe they have to put them some length, some distance in between them enough where you get something out of these signs, as opposed to coming along, there's 50 signs, I drive another 20 feet, there's another 50 signs, I go another 50 feet, and there's another 50 signs. And that's literally what it is if you haven't been up to Gold Hill and 160. So I'd like to see us make some changes. I am okay with reading this tonight as is. What I'm asking is staff to go back and look at these changes, if it's kind of the will of the council through this discussion. If not, then maybe this passes the way it is. But I certainly would like to see some changes made into this.
And I was going to make a suggestion that you just amend the motion, but I think maybe you have the best avenue there with what you just said. We get it through for first reading, and then you get with staff, because you're the one that started this, to the need for fixing this. So I think you're the best person to get with staff and massage this for the next better ordinance, the next meeting. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to make sure we get some input from planning to see if it would be, if we're gonna rewrite it, to see if we do that. I certainly thought, I share the same thoughts, that 4 to 25 is not solving the problem, but we've been updated throughout this process, and I've been watching it. And the first time they suggested that, I talked to planning, and they said they're meeting with the builders and all this, and this is the best they could come up with. And another point I asked that very question. I said, if we limit it to 25, can't you put them all in the same place? You know, we aren't telling them where to put it. So I think we certainly, if the staff has the time, we asked staff to do a whole lot of work, and they did it based on our previous direction.
What was the answer you got on that question?
That yes, it does. That you can put them all in the same place.
All 25?
Yeah, and the way it's written, it is. But they depend on not only our direction from the beginning, but feedback as we go. I figured I was the only one that bothered since that's the answer I got. But you know, we got to work together. If of course, I guess we could approve first reading, and doesn't mean that and whenever they get through, we could come back for second reading. So I wouldn't have a problem with that. As long as staff's acceptable with that, I don't have a problem with that. But that is exactly where it came from. But yeah, I too, the first time I saw that was, are we going in the right direction? Granted, there are more than 25 now per development, but yeah, I agree with you.
Michael, with the adjustments that will occur, we can carry on second and third reading, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Roddy?
Yeah, just recently I started back looking for a house. And I've noticed on the weekends how before, if I wasn't looking for a house, I didn't even notice those signs. But if you're looking for a house and you start to see them, you're like, that's a lot of signs. You know, they're trying to point you to their neighborhood. And I like the idea if we're gonna change the ordinance to make it more specific to the intersection, but even at that, if you keep it at 4, and if you're getting off the interstate and you're trying to, you know, if you're in Fort Mill, you know you're gonna go left, who's to say I won't put my 4 right on that side, and all 7 of us put our 4 on that side, and you're still gonna come up with 50 signs, pretty much. So I don't know how we're gonna stop people from, if it's 15 or if it's 20, and you want that intersection, you're gonna try to put 15 or 20 at that intersection, if it's a popular intersection, that you know people getting off the road and taking a left, and your neighborhood's to the left. To maximize your visibility, you're gonna put as many signs you can when people turn left. But the per intersection, it may even have to come down even less than 4. Because if I can put 4 at that intersection, if I go down the road 2 more blocks, can I put 4 more? You know, so if you're looking at it on a per intersection basis, I still may be able to put out 50 signs if you got 15 intersections. If I can put 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, but, you know, so it's gonna be a crapshoot to figure out what's the best.
Well, let's do this, because I think I hear everybody in agreement, and Mr. Johnson was the spearhead for this, and maybe Mr. Henderson's district too, are kind of the biggest impact zones of this problem. Let's go ahead and follow Mr. Johnson's lead, vote it through, and then let this thing get fine-tuned. I don't think we need to beat this to death, since it's gonna be changed anyway.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Just one quick comment.
Yes, sir.
Just for whatever it's worth, if you even went down to 2, and just like our campaign signs, I made sure that you put it on 2 corners and it could be seen every direction. 2-sided signs. That's all you need. And I would like to make that suggestion to staff, because you can set it up and you can reduce the total signage by doing opposite, like you're jaywalking, to that opposite side of the intersection. 2 sides.
Question on the motion? No.
I just have one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's interesting to me that we spend this much time talking about signs. And if we're gonna go through the exercise of doing this, I'm gonna save my rant about overregulation being rampant, and why are we spending our time on this and we don't spend this much time on looking at tax money we're giving up in a fee lot, although I got it in. Is just, let's make sure when we're doing this, that we know what the purpose is. Is the purpose public health and safety? Is it causing issues? That makes a difference to me in terms of what we're doing versus just clutter, because it certainly does help me too to understand how much time I need to devote to that. So I would ask for some guidance on that when we revisit this.
Okay, question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consider first reading by title only of an ordinance to convey the annex portion of A.O. Jones Boulevard to the town of Fort Mill by quick claim deed and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, staff recommends approval of contract amendment number 1 of the Ebenezer Park Shoreline Stabilization Project in the amount of $31,400 to Habitat Assessment and Restoration Professionals for professional consulting services.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider award of bid proposal number 2281 for the construction of a compressed natural gas time fill refueling site to Novo Energy Solutions LLC of North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consider approval of design services contract in the amount of $62,706 to Keck and Wood Incorporated of Rock Hill for the Highway 161 Water Booster Station.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider approval of utility relocations for Penny's 3 project, 1149008F, South Carolina 557 Griggs Road, Bate Harvey Road intersection, for an estimated cost of $104,897.85. And also consider approval of the county manager to sign the necessary utility agreements for this work.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider approval of change order number 1 for the 2014-2015 York County Pavement Condition Survey Contract with MDS Technologies Incorporated to increase the contract by $7,650 for additional data and digital imagery collection for 425 miles of paved county roads.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Do we have any committee reports? There being none, this is where we have the council member new non-agenda comments. Any comments from the councilman? Mr. Henderson.
Yes, some information has been presented to me, and I think to the rest of you folks, concerning the York County Natural Gas Authority and the appointments that we make to the board and other boards as well. I would just like to bring it to county's attention. And again, I was just recently made aware of this, and I wonder if the rest of, all of us were aware of it, that as far as the way the structure of it is set up, is this strictly, is this from council, is this something that the county designed and structured, or is this like a state mandated situation? Please forgive my ignorance, but I need to know.
I'm fairly certain it's state, but that's just a guess.
Yeah, could you re-clarify your question, Bruce?
Michael, I'm just checking to find out if the Natural Gas Authority board structure, is it state mandated, or is this something that county designed by ordinance?
I believe it's statutory, but I need to confirm that, and I'll be happy to report back to you on that point.
Okay. If it's not, you know, and even if it is, I would hope that state or this county council would reconsider the fact that that those that are appointed from county or from the county council and recommended by county, that they have term limits of 2 terms. And then these others that are appointed by the municipalities apparently is unlimited.
Yeah, the answer to that question is that's our policy and not theirs. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the county policy, and it doesn't matter what board you're on, right?
Okay. Well, I just feel like that whatever we can do to try to help with that situation, to make it to where there can be some
Equality of
all-out
term?
quality representation, and to maximize everyone's point of view from all over the different parts of county. I mean, again, you got a good person on there, that's one thing, but we all know that in some cases, people will stay too long, whether it be here or whether it be in the U.S. Senate or wherever. But I wish we could revisit this and consider this, because to me it just seems to be a little too lopsided if we have any say in it. So I'd appreciate it if we could at least consider that and look at it, because I just think it's very worthy to be considered.
Sure.
And I just want you to clarify, are you asking that the council make our appointments in perpetuity, or are you asking that York County Natural Gas put term limits on their appointment?
Well, I just feel like that somehow or another, it needs, whether it be them, whether it be us, whether it be a combination.
Equality.
Yeah, but I just think, just like we restructured the H-tax situation, just like we restructured some other things to make things, we have been considered as reformers by some people. Some pretty prominent folks that we have been considered as reformers here, and I'm proud of that title. And trying to keep transparency to the best of our ability and so forth. And to have true representation in whatever given board it may be. I just feel instead of rubber stamping over and over and over and over, and after a while, I mean, a person don't quite have the fire they used to have, so to speak.
Why don't you look into that, maybe get with Jim Heckle and just kind of see what you would propose that maybe we do different in that regard? And propose that as a action item.
I'll have to, in relation to Mike, I'll be talking with you as well.
Any other new agenda comments?
Made enough comments tonight.
I just want to say one thing. I want to
Yes,
say
ma'am.
thank you to Karen, and I understand Bump and Britt for organizing the folks to come from the schools. I think that was great, and I think we
I
should
do
do
think it
more
was great.
to encourage our youth to get involved in government, and I think that's
Absolutely.
a great thing. And I also want to say thank you to David Harmon, who is not here, but who did an excellent job helping me fix an issue. I continue to be very impressed and very pleased with the staff at York County, and know that their heart is in the right place, and they are with, we can give them good direction. I have no qualms about us being able to get where we want to get.
I mean, it's good to make that kind of comment because we kind of think it, but we don't say it enough because we really get concerned about our future with what's going on right now and what you hear about the younger generations and stuff. So it's nice to see examples of it's not as bad as everybody thinks. But if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion for executive session?
Move we go into executive session to receive legal advice and discuss a personnel matter.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We'll start in executive session,
Britt, before you go, can I amend Chad's motion? And to see if Chad is agreeable. I'd like to amend that to have receipt of legal advice in a personnel matter, as well as a human resources review.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
that works.
Okay, so, agreeable, so that refined motion, question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we'll start at 9 o'clock. Okay, we just finished executive session. We have one action item from earlier deferment. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve by title only an ordinance authorizing a second amendment to the intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Rock Hill and York County relating to the Texture Corridor redevelopment plan to include council's negotiated items.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Cox?
I do have one question I want to make sure that I clarify with our attorney. Is it the case that the county does not have to approve the amendment in order for the city to move forward with the amount that has been approved by the school district and that has previously been approved by the county council?
That's right.
I understand that we're moving forward in title only. I guess I philosophically have a problem with, and I think, when I ran for this office, just because you do it this way doesn't mean that that's the way I think it should be done. So I'm going to vote no on this, and the reasons why are these. I think that when we move forward with a vote, especially on something that puts it at risk, potentially $2.8 million of taxpayer money, that we need to have an agreement and something tangible in place that we're voting on. I don't have a problem with continuing to negotiate terms. We don't have to have first reading on that to do that. So that is the reason I will be voting no on that. You can't approve you can't pass something now, look at the details later, and that's the philosophy that I think needs to change in government, and that's the reason why I'll be voting no on the motion.
There being no further discussion, I hear none. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
And if there's no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion? Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're adjourned.